This is the Creative Market Free Goods Roundup for the week of March 23rd, 2015. As usual, there are 6 different free goods this week, but they are free this week only. So if when you watch this video, you think you'll have use for any one of these 6 different free items, be sure to check out the description of this video where I'll place links to each one of them. So first up is Wedding Watercolor Floral Kit. So this is a collection of 2 different floral patterns in JPEG format shown right here, as well as an EPS file of some mock-ups where these are shown, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I have these JPEGs open in Photoshop to show them, and if I go to image and then image size, these are 2700 by 2700 pixels, so these should be plenty big for most digital or print applications. Although something worth noting here, although this looks at first glance to be a seamless repeat, this is actually not a seamless repeat, so keep that in mind when you use these, that if you try to repeat these to be much larger patterns, that's not going to work for you. If you're good at creating repeats, you could of course customize these to become seamless repeats by taking the center object right here and then redoing the repeat to make something at least somewhat similar looking, but that'll certainly be a somewhat involved task for you to do. So these are the 2 JPEGs that are included right here. I think the color palettes as well as the illustration style are just really well done. These have a very nice watercolory feel, and I think these would work pretty well on something like a greeting card or a thank you card, anything like that. It says Wedding Watercolors in the title here, so if you have a spring or summer themed wedding, these might come in pretty handy for that. And the second image right here is the same story with very well rendered watercolor images, but that's it for the 2 JPEGs that are included of these illustrations right here. And I have the EPS open inside Illustrator here to show this, and I did quickly just drag this background off to the side here so you can take a look at that. If you're just looking for a cool vector wood background, this is also included, so you can just pull that and use that on a different project. But here are the mockups included with this set right here that shows the different illustrations in use on these various invitations and cards right here. And if I click on these are vector shapes, so all the type here is outlined, so you couldn't go in and change what the type says, although I think a lot of this, like RSVP or thank you, is pretty generic, so you might get some use out of that regardless. The same applies on this menu card right here, so if you're wanting to use this as like an actual design element, you'll probably have to go in here and customize these a little bit, although you could certainly just take these elements and use these ideas, and then using the included JPEGs right here, custom make your own versions of these inside Photoshop or InDesign, however you want to go ahead and do that. But these mockups look very convincing. They're very nicely done for an Illustrator mockup here. As you look at the shadows on this envelope right here, they look pretty realistic, so I think they did a nice job on that. And if I go down to the one below it right here, there's just some more cards. So this is a really good layout option right here. So if you want to really use this and then customize it to make some stuff for either a wedding or any kind of celebration where you think the style might come in handy, these are some really good examples to kind of take and use as you see fit. One thing I will note with this file though is that I'm on a pretty fast computer and this file just crawls on my machine. It seems extremely bogged down. I think it has something to do with the way they embedded the images, although I'm not totally sure why it's doing that. So this could be just a my system issue and this won't happen to you, but at least when I go in here and I try to move this image off to the side, as you can tell there is a pretty significant delay. It's actually still doing it right now. So there it finally moved over. So I do think it somehow involves the images and how these are rendered in here, but if you're on a slower machine, do keep that in mind. If you're experiencing some weird delays or slowdowns, that's probably what it is. But overall, a cool set of mockups here, and then the illustrations of the flowers themselves look really good. So be sure to use some of the layout ideas on these mockups to custom make your own stuff if that is something that interests you. And if that does interest you, be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. Next up is Extended Ribbon Pack. So this set is a really nice and straightforward pack of ribbons and banners for Adobe Illustrator. So you're going to need either Adobe Illustrator to use this or a program that can accept the Adobe Illustrator format. And I'm just going to scroll through all the different ribbons that are included here. There's a ton to go through. So this pack includes quite a bit of content in it. And I'm just going to zoom out so you can see everything at once right here. And I'm going to zoom in once again on this middle section here. So you can of course customize the color of these if you use the direct selection tool, which is the white arrow over here in the corner. If you hit A on your keyboard, it'll select that. So if I select on these little green sections right here with that selection tool, and I was holding shift to click both of them at once, I could change this to be something different like a dark blue if I wanted to. So you can fully customize the color of these very quickly and easily to suit whatever it is you are working on. And there's some kind of interesting abstract ideas as well. So this is totally different than the types of banners that I have seen in the past, as they don't really have these little inlets right here. But I think this is kind of a cool way of presenting information if you have a very techie or digital presentation where you want to make almost a flowchart of type. Kind of a neat idea there, but there is a nice selection of different ribbons here to pick from, so you can really go through and figure out which ones you either do or do not want to use on your project. But this pack is super straightforward. Basically what you see here is what you get. There's a ton of different ribbons and banners to go through, so if you like the style of these banners, just pick up the pack while it's free, and then you can kind of go in here and check out which ones you want to use. And if you want to move stuff around, you can just click on that particular banner, right click and then ungroup, and then you can move these to be whatever it is you want them to be, or even ungroup these and kind of make these separate elements here. So as you can see, it's pretty quick to go in here and just make simple edits or changes to kind of suit your needs. But that's it for this pack. If these vector banners look useful to you, be sure to pick this pack up this week. Next up is Ditzy Floral Digital Paper Pattern. So this is a set of 12 different digital papers, and they are ditzy floral patterns, and they're all in JPEG format. And if I go to image and then image size here, just to look at the size, they're 3600 by 3600 pixels, so they should be plenty big for most applications where you want to use this. And these are also seamless repeating patterns. You can just tile the images to make them be whatever scale you want them to be. And if you want to make these even smaller, or a little bit more dense, I should say, you could just quickly do a repeat like I'm going to do right here very quickly. This might not be quite totally perfect as I'm going to go through this pretty fast. But as you can see, it's really quick and easy just to go in here and repeat these so that you can scale these to be however big or small your project needs them to be. So I just picked 5 at random out of the 12 total to show here, since you'll get a really good idea of what to expect in this pack just looking at these. So here's the second one, which is very similar to this first one here, just a different color palette. And the third one's relatively the same story, although as you can tell, the flowers themselves look very similar, but the patterns of the flowers do change. So keep that in mind, that just because the flowers look similar, the patterns of the flowers themselves are not the same. And these ones right here are actually my favorites of the bunch. These have a really cool vintage vibe to them. It reminds me of floral pattern design from the 1800s. I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here so you can get a better idea of how these illustrations look up close. I think this is a really cool color palette, and I think the overall illustration style and the layout of this repeating pattern looks very nice. So here's the last one. It's very similar to the one before it, but once again, a very cool color palette, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer here. I think these are really cool in their execution, and they do a really nice job of just pulling off this style. And the fact that it's a repeating pattern means that this is an extremely versatile set to have. So if you like these flower illustrations and you think you might have use for them in any future projects, be sure to pick this pack up this week while it's still free. And do remember, there are 12 in total, not just the 5 I showed. So be sure to check them all out when you pick this pack up. Next we have Italio, which is a font. These fonts are provided in both OpenType as well as TrueType font formats, and I have them open inside Adobe Illustrator here to show them. And this set includes 6 different weights and styles to this font, so this is a very complete font offering for a free font, so that's really great to see. And it does include both lowercase as well as uppercase letters, as well as all the numbers and a ton of special characters, which I'll get into in just a little bit. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit closer up at the top here on this version, which is the light version, just so you can get a better feel of how these letters look up close. They have a little bit of a wavering or inconsistent feeling throughout them that give it that handmade or hand-drawn appearance, as well as some imperfect connections, like how there's a little bit of an overlap on the side here. That just gives it that slightly imperfect handmade look. And I'll just scroll over here to the capital letters really quick so you can get a look at these and get a better idea of how those look. And I'll just very quickly scroll down the list here of all the different weights and sizes. So basically there is one size to each one, and then an italic version of it. So this is light, and then this one is light italic, with this version right here being medium, which is the darkest of the set. And here's the italic version of that. And this one right here is the regular version, and then the italic version of that below. And down here I have all the numbers typed out 1 through 0, as well as a ton of different special characters, and I'll scroll off to the side here so you can see a little bit more. If I click on this and then go to type and then glyphs, you can tell this includes really just a huge amount of different letters here, different letter forms. I think this font will cover pretty much any language that's based on the Latin language set, so this has just a ton of different special characters with a wide range of accent marks and all that stuff. So this should be a very complete font so long as you're on a Latin-based language. I think this one will probably have you covered. As you can tell as I continue scrolling down here, there is just a huge amount of different special characters and glyphs included in this set, including stuff like registered marks and trademarks. So if I just click on this really quick and then double click on the registered mark right here, you can tell it applies these very quickly. So it's really cool to see that there was that much attention spent on making sure that pretty much all the different languages are covered here. And I went ahead and typed up free Goods Roundup just so you can see how this looks. I think this looks really solid typed out. The kerning looks just fine. As I've said before, in fonts like this, if the kerning's a bit inconsistent, I think that almost adds to the font a little bit to give it that handmade appearance just a little bit more. But even that being said, I think the stock kerning is really solid throughout all these letters, and the overall letter forms seem to work really well together. So I really like this font, and it is a very, very complete font. Like I said before, there's 3 different weights, and then each one of those 3 different weights has its own italic version, and it does include pretty much everything that you would come to expect from a very well-designed font. Tons of different special characters and glyphs and all the numbers, all that fun stuff. So if this font looks like something you might have use for, be sure to pick it up this week while it's still free. Next up is screenmatte, a Photoshop action. So this is an action for Adobe Photoshop, so you are going to need Adobe Photoshop to use this. And looking at the way the actions are set up, I don't think it'll work with Photoshop Elements, but you're certainly welcome to try. It's totally free. So if you do use Adobe Photoshop Elements and it happens to work, just let people know in the comments so they can go in here and experiment as well. But I have this image loaded up right here just as a baseline. And once you load up this action set, which is right here, it's a folder called screenmatte FX. There's 10 different matte actions and then some other different light and noise options that'll show at the very end here. But I just hit the play all button, which will save all 10 of the different matte actions, but not these light actions in the history bar right here. So I'm just going to scroll through these 10 really quickly here so you can see how these look. And I'll just click on the first one. So as you can see when you look at these different matte actions give these a very vintagey kind of sun faded or just well-worn look. It's the kind of look that I tend to associate with really old cameras or perhaps old film or stuff like a Polaroid camera where if they sit out in the light too long or the photos get damaged slightly, they tend to have this very matte, very faded look to them. But I think these actions do a pretty convincing job of pulling that effect off. And there's 10 of these matte ones in total, so the way I would use it, I just hit that play all button, go into my history right here and see which one happens to work best for the kind of look that I'm trying to achieve here. So I went through all 10 pretty quickly right here just so you can kind of see how all those looked. This third one looks pretty good in my opinion. And also included here are some different light effects. So I'm just going to hit this round light 01 and let the action run very quickly here so you can get an idea of what this does. What it will do essentially is just overlay some really interesting light effects. I believe the style is called bokeh. So this does a really good and convincing job of pulling off this effect here. And also in the download there are some JPEGs that I believe are just the way these actions appear when they run before they're set to screen, like this one right here is. So if you want to manually pull one of those in, I'll just drag it in really quickly here so you can see what these look like. You could manually put these over your images and play with the different blending modes to see what works best over the top of your images. But I'm going to delete this one that I just made right here so I can do another one. And I'll just let this action run through very quickly. And once I get done with this second bokeh style light right here, I'll go into the other light sources. But this is a pretty cool look and it's a very convincing look as well. I think this looks pretty natural, at least in my opinion. I'm not a photographer, but I think this looks pretty darn good. And I'm going to delete this one right here as well and go into one of these other light sources because I actually don't know what this one's going to look like. So this particular light action right here really overblows the image quite a bit. It makes this image look extremely faded or extremely worn. This is the kind of stuff that I remember seeing if you leave a Polaroid in the light for a really long period of time, then you find it later on. This kind of light damage will happen. I'm going to see if I can go back to an earlier color state right here just so I can do one more of these before I stop. So this is the fourth light action. I'm going to run it really quick just so you can see how this one looks. So this is a really cool look right here with a nice brightened up side right here and then some bokeh style lights near the center of the image right here. So a really cool set of actions, and if you're looking to give your photos a very nice vintage matte appearance and then have some added bonuses of these bokeh style light effects or just generally washed out light effects, this set of actions for Photoshop might come in pretty handy. So if these actions looked cool to you and you think you might have use for them in your photography, be sure to pick it up this week. And last up here is fotalk, a WordPress photography theme. This is a really straightforward theme for photographers and it's on the WordPress content management system, which means it's pretty easy to go in there and update and add comments to and all that fun stuff. And this is a fully responsive theme as well, so it should look good on no matter what kind of device you are looking at it on. And I'm just going to go into one of the posts up top here after I'm done scrolling to the bottom here. So at the bottom here there's an About Me section, a bunch of different tabs, as well as contact details, archive, and then recent posts, a little search bar if you want to search through the posts. But back up to the top here, if I click on one of these images like this chair right here, it'll bring me to a new page that brings up the photo of the chair in a much larger format. At the bottom here you can tell where it was posted, in this case in Nature. There's a comments section as you can see right here, which is always a really nice part of WordPress. Comments are integrated really nicely. And just below the photo there is a share place for Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Google+. I'm not sure if you can add in a description underneath the image, but I do hope that is included. I would assume that's probably included, but I'm not 100% sure there. On the side here there's a navigation, so if I go to contact, it'll bring up a contact page right here with name, email, subject, and message. And you could of course customize all these options on the side here once you actually download and install this theme. There's a blog button. When I click that, I'm brought to the blog page right here. So that's cool, I didn't notice this before. It does look like you can add descriptions below the photos, so that's a pretty big plus on this one. And I'll just scroll down the blog really quickly here so you can get a good idea of how this looks when you actually put a bunch of stuff in here. I really like how these different images are segmented here with the different thumbnail sizes. It looks pretty good. And I'll just keep scrolling down to the bottom here. You can embed audio as well as video files, so that's nice if you don't want to use this as a photography theme. You could definitely use this as a either place to post audio stuff or video stuff, or even a portfolio site for whatever it is you're working on. Just because this is a theme for photographers doesn't mean that's all it's for. You can definitely use this for tons of different stuff if what you share is either images, sound, or video, which is pretty much everything creative, you should be good to go. So a cool theme that's very straightforward. It really puts the images first and foremost, so if that's important to you, this is a theme worth checking out. So if you like the style of this theme and you think you might have use for it, be sure to pick it up this week. So that's it for this week's free goods, and do remember they are free this week only, so be sure to check out the description of this video where I'll place links to each one of them. And as always, if you found this video helpful, please comment, like, and favorite, and if you want to see this video every week, please subscribe. This video is released every Monday to let you know it's free this week on Creative Market. Thank you for watching.